So I've talked about this before, but it's really important to think about controlling your emotions, not in the sense of like suppressing them, the sort of old way of thinking about controlling your emotions, but to view yourself as a third person where you're walking through things and you're thinking about, okay, when can I actually show my emotions? When can I not show my emotions? And how can we walk through this to get to a better outcome? And that's something that I struggle with just like everybody else, right? It's a hard thing to do. One of the things I had to deal with, or I deal with, is, interacting with, other people, and, whether it being my kids or my wife or, other academics and those kind of things where, man, it's hard for me to control my emotions and think about how to manage them to get to something a little better for everybody. But I am definitely getting better with that by walking through things and thinking about how can I manage the situation as if I was not like I was an outside person. I'll give you an example. Today was a really real case. And, I was watching, my kids are in competitive swimming, and it can be pretty intense for everybody that's there. And there was one thing that one of my boys and I were not agreeing with, and I was definitely getting emotional with it. And the thing that I had to sort of take a step back and think about is like, okay, we need to sort of set the groundwork and what the decision is. And so we set a groundwork as like, if you do this thing, then you're going to lose your electronics for a week. Electronics being like iPad and those kind of things. And he chose to do one thing. And so now what we're doing, we just had a negotiation. It's part of the reason why I'm going for a walk, because I need to release some of this tension that I feel. We had a negotiation that, this is what the deal was, and this is how we're going to stick with it. It's not necessarily that I want to do no electronics, because that actually is a lot more difficult as a parent to do that, because there's lots of moments where you do need that little downtime. But it's also one of those things where we made a deal, and the deal was that, if you chose that particular way, then there'll be no electronics, for a week. And with that, we have to deal with it, right? So I told him I was proud of him, and, he did a good job. But this is what the deal was. And so it's not necessarily that I wanted to go through with it, but that's what the deal was. And to sort of set the ground rules, I was thinking about, going forward, it's not necessarily the decision right now and the outcomes right now that I'm worried about. This is what the ground rules are, and we're going to stick with them so that he knows that it's a fair outcome for everybody. And I hope that's what I'm most known for, at least with my kids, in terms of being a parent that's really fair. If we have some set ground rules and we say this thing is going to happen, well, then this particular thing is going to happen, right? I don't want to be somebody that, doesn't spend the time or negates on something that I say is going to happen, because I want to make sure that they trust me and I trust them, and to build this bond over time. So if we just say we're going to do this, this is what's going to happen. This is what the ground rules are, and we're going to stick with it. No matter, even if it doesn't work out in my favor as a parent, or doesn't, it sort of loses power in my end, is sort of thinking about the long-term benefit of building this particular relationship so we can go along together, right? And that's really thinking about what does it actually look like in the long run. And yes, it's not optimal in the short term for anybody, to be honest, but it's thinking about the long-term benefit for us, for our relationship, so that he knows that I can trust him and he can trust me. And when we sort of arrive upon something, this is what the deal is going to be. And so that's the way I was dealing with it. Obviously, I was removing my emotions from it. And even still, it was emotional. But I was trying to remove myself as much as I can and let him know that I love him. But at the same time, and this is what the deal was, and we have to sort of stick with this particular deal and how this sort of works out. And it's not necessarily, again, it's not about the what sort of win-lose thing in the short term. This is what the deal was. And you're free to make that decision, but when that actually happens, this is what's going to happen. So it's thinking of, building things in the short term, and hopefully I don't sort of mess them up. But also I want, people to know that when this happens, this is what's going to happen. And, we're not, it's kind of a tricky thing, right? Like I don't want to be a parent that's always going to sort of bail somebody out as well, or somebody that's going to bail other people out regardless. I think that having a bit of groundwork, not in the sense of that this is conditional love. I don't like that term, but it's more, and it's not tough love, but it is like this is a learning experience, what's going on. And it's the long run, so that, hey, you know what, this is what happens in sort of the greater of things that happen. So you're free to make your choice, but then at the same time, you're also free for it to not work out in your way that you would like. That's a really tough and difficult thing for everybody to go through and to decide, because I can't force somebody to do something, and I'm not going to sit there and force somebody to do something. That's just, I don't think that is healthy for anybody in any circumstance. So we have to choose on what's going to happen, and sort of think about what are the outcomes that are going to happen. So that's where I want to sort of end this, is thinking about, hey, you know what? We all have choices that we make. Sometimes they're really tough, and sometimes they're sort of made in not great situations. But when it happens, we have to sort of think about, this is what the particular consequences that they're going to be. And, to think about how do you work your way out of this, and to, know, hey, wait a minute, this is not always optimal. And perhaps, there's easier ways of doing this in the future. And I know that this is tough. It's tough for myself. It's tough for everybody to go through this kind of stuff. But I also think it's super important. I think about this in my classroom all the time, is thinking about, hey, I'm going to be as fair as I possibly can. But at the same time, you know what? This is what happens if you sort of don't set yourself up and go, and don't set yourself up in a positive way. And, we need to really think about that. How do we build trust with each other, so that at the end of it, there is a bigger lesson that happens. And that's where you have to remove yourself and think of yourself in the third person in dealing with a lot of complicated decisions that you might come across. All right, take care and have a wonderful day. Bye.